one of the YouTube channels that we enjoyed watching and contributed to us making the decision to start YouTube ourselves was the OG Japan discussing YouTube channel, Let's Ask Shogo. Him and his wife Harumi are taking a bit of a much-deserved break from YouTube at the moment, but they should know that whenever they decide to come back, we'll all be there to support them. And with that said, one of the reasons why we believe Shogo deserves a lot more praise than he does is because he was brave enough to go against the tide and speak up on the negative aspects of Japan despite the potential criticism. He was brave enough to speak up against Bushido, for instance, the Bushido that so many of the, let's just say, a certain type of people in the West who are obsessed with everything samurai related believe to be the manly code of life that is the key to solve all of their life's problems. Let's not get it twisted. Bushido does definitely have a set of admirable traits, and some of his codes can indeed help us in our modern lives. But at the same time, it is also far from being this all-good Japanese warrior spirit in which many idolize it to be as well. And he did this with quite a few other Japan-related subjects as well, such as the half taboo of a topic that we have in Japan of how a lot of us are afraid to talk to the people from Kyoto. This is largely due to the degree of passive aggressiveness and the double-sided nature of their way of speaking, commonly known as the Kyoto way of speaking. Not everyone in Kyoto is like that, of course, as in reality, one of the kindest and most genuine people in Japan are from Kyoto as well. But just the image that we have in general, as well as the precedence of interactions that a lot of people have had in Kyoto before, gives us this fear of conversing with certain types of people from Kyoto. But then, when a Japan-loving outsider hears of this, they may think, what? The people from this beautiful Kyoto? A city full of tradition and sophisticated people? Nonsense. It is one thing to create a video talking negatively about Johnny Somali when he's at the highest point of controversy. All the criticism against Johnny Somali is more than deserved, by the way, and I'm by no means saying that he does not deserve to be publicly chastised, because he more than definitely does and should never be allowed to enter Japan again. However, my point here is that there is essentially no risk as a creator to create content that criticizes Johnny Somali when everyone else is also condemning him. But to go against the tide and dare to speak up on a matter that does not agree with the popular opinion or has not yet been discussed or has been shushed, that takes courage. And that's why I'm shouting out Shogo in this video, as while conducting research for today's video, something in which he said a few years ago in one of his videos came up in my mind. Now, I believe the statement was made in one of his videos where he discussed how so many of the initial COVID patients in Japan, especially if they lived in the countryside, were subject to this type of severe group bullying from the village community. However, as much as I've attempted to find this video from Shogo through searching and going through his video list several times, I was unfortunately unable to do so. Not sure if it's that I just cannot spot the video, as he has already made over 900 plus videos at this point, or that as the topic is indeed quite sensitive, as in regarding COVID, he may have decided to eventually delete the video. Absolutely nothing wrong with this, by the way. If you are to go and check out Shogo's podcast channel where he shares his thoughts, he has discussed how he receives all kinds of negative comments, including from the Japanese people themselves, and how he actually feels more hurt by the negative Japanese comments than the English ones. So I believe the particular video that I'm talking about, where Shogo mentioned the social issues existing in the countryside regions of Japan, is bound to have received some negative comments as well, especially from some of the Japanese people who are living in the countryside. So again, huge shout out to Shogo for withstanding all negativity and still stand strong and speak up against many societal issues existing in Japan, despite many of the people in Japan wanting to keep all of it hush-hush and under the surface to the outside world. If I could perhaps conduct a podcast episode with Shogo later, that would be one of the most amazing things ever. Anyways, getting back to the topic, although not exact word by word, the sentence in which Shogo said in the video that I've watched was a statement in the lines of, "Even I, as a Japanese person, am afraid to visit certain parts of the Japanese countryside." When he said this, many people abroad could have again had the reaction of, "What? This beautiful countryside? Where everybody looks so kind?" Nonsense. And let's not get it wrong. The majority of the Japanese people living in the countryside regions are probably the kindest people who you'll ever come across and meet. However, at the same time, I also knew exactly what Shogo meant and why he said what he said. And we hope that through the real life story in which we'll be sharing with you guys today, you can gain a little more sense of caution before potentially visiting or even eventually thinking of moving into a countryside region of Japan. Again, we should not be hasty to overgeneralize and think that the type of predicament which recently had to be faced by the Japanese female YouTuber of today's real-life story, who quite literally had to escape from the region, will happen to absolutely everyone who newly moves into a countryside region of Japan. Because it will not. And I'll continue to emphasize the fact that, for the majority of the people, moving into a countryside region of Japan may be one of the best decisions of their lives, as most people are kind, not to mention the beautiful scenery of many of the rural regions of Japan. But at the same time, visiting or even planning of eventually buying a house and living in the Japanese countryside, after watching one of the many YouTube videos recently emerging on the English-speaking side of YouTube, seeing how Japan is giving away these beautiful houses in the countryside almost for free, may also potentially prove to be dangerous, especially if you are to meet the rare type of malicious villagers as faced by the Japanese YouTuber of today's story. As after all, the life in the Japanese countryside may not turn out to be this peaceful utopia that will solve all of your life's problems, especially if you enter the region with this complete sense of naivety and no caution at all. To use the words of Emil Cioran in his work, On the Heights of Despair, to quote, "While pains have character, pleasures vanish, melting away like forms with indistinct contours. It is hard to remember pleasure and the circumstances surrounding it, while the memory of pain is poignant, and that of its circumstances makes it even more so." So by raising a sense of awareness and caution to some of the realities of the life in the Japanese countryside, if this video could help just one person who's watching it right now avoid the type of poignant pain that had to be felt by the Japanese YouTuber of today's real-life story, who had to recently escape from the countryside region of Japan where she was previously staying in, or help a person outside of Japan to understand the type of social issues still faced in the rural regions of Japan, we will consider this video to have done its job. So without further ado, let us dive into today's video. A young Japanese woman from the city of Nagoya by the name of Rin has just graduated from university in 2020. And with the money in which she has saved up by working part-time for 4 years while attending university, she decided to open her own nail salon. However, soon after she opened her nail salon, the pandemic arrived, which made her bankrupt and led her to close her business less than half a year from opening it in the summer of 2020. She obviously lost her office as well, which meant that she has also lost her home, as the nail salon was also her home at the time where she lived and slept in. So the only thing left for her being her car and her paid parking lot spot costing 20,000 yen a month, she decides to move to Hokkaido. More specifically, she moved to Chiri, a tiny but nonetheless beautiful northern countryside village in the island of Hokkaido, consisting of just over 25,000 people in population. She moved into a house that cost 7,000 yen or $47 in monthly rent and began to vlog her countryside life on YouTube. And her YouTube channel soon began to take off. She accumulated more than 200,000 subscribers in just a span of a year and continued to progressively gain hundreds of thousands of subscribers in the upcoming months. And for good reasons. Many people enjoyed watching the beautiful scenery of the Japanese countryside that was depicted in her vlogs. Her video editing skills are actually quite phenomenal as well. And to add to that, many also felt a sense of sympathy towards her, as what they saw was a young individual who has lost everything that she had, but was nonetheless working hard to live through yet another day, despite the difficulties faced of living in an old house in the countryside without much money. Her stove frequently went out, and due to Chiri village being an extremely cold area to live in, her water pipe froze during the winter, for instance. But then she always found a solution, and many in Japan enjoyed watching her fight through and overcome personal obstacles. So with her rising popularity, she joined a famous influencer agency in Japan in January 2022, and even went on to appear on television in September of the same year by coming on as a guest on Dancing Sama Palace, one of the most popular variety shows in Japan. So from being a bankrupt individual who only had nothing but a car a few years ago, she has now become one of the most popular YouTubers in all of Japan, with having more than 400,000 subscribers by the end of 2022. But then, while everything looked to be on the rise for Rin, she suddenly left Chiri village and moved to Shiretoku, a peninsula located north from Chiri. She did not initially tell anybody, including her subscribers, as to why she exactly did this. So a number of her subscribers obviously began to get very curious, and some of her fans even went to Chiri village to ask around on what happened. And the answer they returned from the Chiri villagers absolutely surprised her fans. The villagers said that Rin actually never lived in Chiri and just occasionally visited the village in order to film her YouTube content. This led many of her fans to be disappointed, progressively more so, as Rin seemed to stop uploading around the time of this controversy and did not make any official statement regarding what the villagers said were actually true or false. But then, on March 24th, 2023, Lin uploaded a video titled, "I will explain why I had to escape from the village," which then turned the story around altogether. Now, the story gets quite long and complicated, so we'll try our best to keep everything short while not missing anything out. We'll first tell you of what happened as according to the story told by Lin herself. Then, we'll also provide the opposing side's point of view and what they had to say towards Lin's accusations. Lin was being allegedly harassed by this male villager, man A. And A seems to be some sort of a power figure in the village, as it is said that a regional politician, his grandfather to be specific, is a powerful local politician from the Kushiro City Council, and is heavily supporting and setting up the path for A to be the next leader of the village, along with A's family business being a huge part of the village community for generations. All of this means that at least in this tiny village of Chiri, man A could play the power game and act like the village king quite successfully. A demanded several times towards Lin that they meet alone separately when nobody else was around. Lin obviously refused his demands several times, and for good reasons. A was being a creep and someone that Lin, more than understandably, did not want to associate herself with. For instance, A constantly invited Lin for dinner, but as Lin suffered from an eating disorder at the time, she told A, perhaps you could have some tea during the day rather than a meal. But A ignored her requests and brought her to a curry restaurant in Kushiro. He told Lin that he would quote-unquote cure Lin's eating disorders by feeding her a lot of curry and fried rice cakes. Like, what? At this point, you can clearly tell that A is a person who lives in his own world and just has to do whatever he wants to do. So Lin obviously declined, saying that she really could not eat the food. But then, the owner of the restaurant, who's a friend of A, got angry and starts chastising Lin, saying, "I thought you were poor, so I'm serving you food. Why aren't you eating it?" Quite a few things can be implied here. First, at least in this little area of Hokkaido, everyone sides with A, the power figure with a regional politician backing him, as well as the powerful influence in which A's family had in the village for generations. This is because, let's say that I was the friend of man A. When my friend forcefully brings a person who has an eating disorder and force food down their throat, despite the fact that the person declined several times, I would slap my friend in the face saying, "What on earth are you doing? She has a medical condition and can't eat." And I believe we all agree that this should be the normal human reaction. And not only was A a creep, but a stalker. On one day, Lin conducted a photo shoot in her garden with her staff photographer. After the photographer left, A calls Lin and says, "Your boyfriend came over earlier, eh?" Needless to say, not only is this extremely creepy, but downright criminal. This shows that A literally has an eye on Lin in her house, be it he has a camera installed somewhere, or he has some influence over Lin's neighbors, and told them to have a watch on Lin to see whoever comes in and goes out of her house. Furthermore, when Lin contacted the village hall and asked whether she could introduce some local shops in her YouTube videos, they all turned her away. And around the same time, A increases the frequency of his calls and invitations to Lin, asking they meet separately. And as you'll see later, A's village acquaintance, B, we'll explain more on B later by the way, tells Lin that if she wants to do anything inside the village, she has to listen to A's demands and meet with A alone as he wants to. You do not have to be a rocket scientist to connect the dots here. There is a reason why all of Lin's YouTube videos in the countryside are of her alone inside her house or with nature, because she was partly ostracized from the village community and was not given the go sign by the village hall that is most likely heavily influenced by the power figure A, and was thus constantly rejected when she asked the village hall several times on whether she could be made the initial introductions to the people inside the village hall who's in charge of the village's tourism and promotion. All of that, of course, would have immediately changed if Lin submitted to A's demands and go out dinners with him and meet with him separately. But Lin continued to reject A's demands, and A, due to the apparent anger from constantly being rejected, began to spread lewd negative rumors regarding Lin around the village, as in how she used to be a gravure model, etc., all of which were later proven to be completely false. Again, Lin frequently describes A as a figure of authority inside the village, and that A is a man of position that can give orders to the staffs at the Chiri village hall. We can go on, but I believe you guys get the type of treatment in which Lin received during her time in the countryside village. Lin says that she is currently suing A in court for harassment. We continue on with the timeline of events as told by Lin. Scared by the constant harassment by A, Lin decides to ask Man B for advice. Man B is a person who's a senior of A. But although B is older than A, B basically works under A and follows his orders. And both B and A are one of these really, please excuse my language, but extremely punchable type of people that you come across at least once in your lifetime. The type of people to S-harass or conduct borderline harassment to women. Then when the woman retaliates in order to prevent the S-harassment from moving on to a full-out S-assault, then these cunning beings go on to make the victims feel like they're the weird ones by saying, "Hey, A, it's just a joke, why so serious? You can't take jokes?" Or, "Hey, A, why so serious? Calm down, I thought you were enjoying it too." And such uncomfortable or borderline criminal joke that they have done to Rin includes A saying, "Come on inside of my bed now," or "I'm going to your house right now to play pranks on you." Imagine being a 4'9", frail woman as in the case of Rin, living alone in an isolated countryside house without much security, receiving a text message from a man who somehow knows exactly when and for how long a visitor enters and leaves her house, saying, "I'm going to your house right now to play pranks on you." And we all know what these type of people mean when they use the word joke or prank. We cannot fathom the sheer degree of fear in which Rin must have felt during that time. But anyhow, rather than helping Rin, Man B, the underling of Man A, also continues to act in a creepy fashion as in the case of Man A, quote-unquote joking to Rin saying, I keep re-emphasizing the word joke because when Man B conducted his rebuttal interview with a Japanese media outlet, in which we'll get more in-depth into later, that's what he continued to say, that him and A were just joking around. And some of such jokes by B to Rin were, to quote, "Hey, why don't you just marry A? I'm not kind, Rin. I'm a naughty pervert. Being erotic means you're healthy." And most importantly, having the audacity to tell Rin that if she wants to continue living in Chiri village, she has to meet with A. No way around it, and how Man A will make her life unlivable if she does not do so. And knowing the S-harassment in which A has done onto Rin, which was enough evidence for her to file a S-harassment case to the Japanese court, you do not have to be a rocket scientist to guess what A eventually wanted to do with Rin when they met alone at a secluded place. And B was exacerbating Rin's pain by going around telling people of how he was going to get Rin and A married. As if he can decide whom Rin gets to marry. So after discussing the matter with her mother and her manager, Rin decided to run away from Chiri village and evacuate herself to the nearby area of Shiretoko. Then after she ran away from Chiri village, she hears of something truly frightening. Her manager from her agency gave her a call, telling her not to go back to her house in Chiri to pick up her belongings or anything like that, as the manager has heard that a number of men from the village had plans of attacking her while Rin was inside her house. Rin said that she reported this to the police, but then this did not become a criminal case as she has already evacuated herself from the village at that point and technically have not yet been assaulted. But then afterwards, this is when what Rin described as group bullying and ostracizing from the villagers, or Murahachibu in Japanese, got more severe. Her neighboring villager began to make her house a dumping ground of snow. The village tour guide who has never met Rin in her entire life spread negative rumors about her when tourists came to the village. Private personal information of Rin that are only known by the workers at the Chiri village hall was somehow made public on SNS. And while all of this was happening, Rin says that she wanted to let all her subscribers know what was going on. However, her management agency at the time, said that the S-harassment case, or the plans of the villagers to attack her while she was at her home, if made public news, would damage the reputation of as a company. So prevented Rin from speaking out, thus the reason why Rin did not create any content for quite a while after her fans began to find out that she no longer lived in the village, and the news of this became more and more known around Japan. Continued to insist to Rin that she should not make any public statement, and that people from the agency will go and meet Man A separately and handle the situation. However, Rin was worried that even if the staff from meet with A and make him stop harassing her, nothing will eventually get fixed as A and his underlings, such as B, there is even an underling C in which we'll get to later, or people working at the village hall will continue to spread lies and negative rumors about her. So she dropped as her management agency and decided to come out public with the news. On March 24th, 2023, Rin uploaded the video on her YouTube channel. I will explain why I had to escape from the village, finally explaining to her subscribers of what had happened and why she evacuated herself from Chiri village. Then on March 27th, 2023, 2 men from the village hall came to her house without contacting her in order to quote-unquote investigate. When asked later by Rin's new agency on what they were trying to investigate, the village hall never specified a reason. When Rin did not answer the door, the 2 men used the master key to open the door and broke into her house without any permission. You do not have to be on Lin's side to know that this is extremely scary, infuriating, and a blatant transgression of the Japanese law. Imagine if she did not evacuate herself already to another location and was still inside the house at the time. Lin said that although she was not living in her village house at the time, she has already paid the rent fees for the month of March 2023. This means that such blatant break-in is, once again, strictly illegal, as it is not as if they had a police warrant or something. But then, as many Japanese commentators have said, there seems to be this type of law of the village in which the villagers adhere by that is different from the actual law of the country. Thus the reason why the people from the village hall did not hesitate to just open their house door using a master key and get in without any second thoughts. There is a CCTV footage of them breaking in and a voice recording of them shouting, "We have the keys to your door." Lin says that she suspected that man A ordered his underlings in the village hall to search her house. So a staff from a new management agency called the Chiri village hall and talked to the assistant of the general secretary of the village hall. In an irritated tone, the assistant said that they visited her house because they did not know Lin's phone number. However, this is a blatant lie from the part of the village hall assistant, as Lin exchanged name cards before with the village hall assistant, and there is physical evidence of her sending her email address and her phone number to the village hall assistant on a separate text message. So they clearly had her phone number, but just decided to not call her and break into her house with a master key. All of this was only 3 days after Lin posted her YouTube video. I will explain why I had to escape from the village. After Lin uploaded her explanation video on March 24th, 2023, she began to be harassed by another man from the village. We'll call him C. C, who's a friend of B, sent Lin 130 messages on SNS in the span of a week, attempting to hide the acts previously done by A and B. He then did something that must have been both enraging and frightening for Lin. Remember how Lin was currently evacuating at a place in Shiretoko, which is around 2.5 hours drive away from Chiri, but is still located on the Hokkaido island. But then, C went all the way to Shiretoko, found out where she lived, and took pictures of her new house in Shiretoko and uploaded it several times on social media. And the evidences are right there, as Lin showed such SNS posts made by C on one of her YouTube videos. Man C then had the audacity to come out on an interview hosted by a Japanese YouTuber in C's attempts to refute some of Lin's claims and make her look bad. However, he somehow managed to get himself and the people from the village to look more bad by slipping information throughout the interview, which revealed the fact that he was a legitimate stalker and a liar. Again, I know that I'm not supposed to inject my opinion here, but please let me just say one thing. This guy C is such an annoying little being. He thinks that stalking someone and finding the exact location of a woman living alone is some kind of a joke and a fun game that he plays. During the interview, C said, "I know exactly where Lin lived in Chiri, and there is no way that she could have been attacked by the villagers while she was in her house. The police station is so close to her house, so she can just easily run to the police station or something if a number of men attack her." The interviewer then asks him, "How do you know the exact location of Lin's house?" C then does this smug little laugh and says, "I can't tell you how I know, but I have my evidences."
言えないけどあります。
He literally sounds like he wants to be patted in the back for being such a good detective and how he was able to so successfully find out Lin's house and watch her. This obviously explains why, even when Lin ran away from her house in Chiri village to another house in Shiretoko, Man C made it a mission to drive up to Shiretoko, somehow also find out the location of her new evacuation home as well, and proudly upload the photos of her new house in Shiretoko on social media for everyone else to see. So the interviewer also feels that this guy is yabai, so further presses him and continues to ask him on how he knew the exact location of Lin's house while she was living in Chiri village. Man C, still acting like this is all some fun joke, mockingly says, maybe I can just say that I heard from someone from the village hall then. So the interviewer then asks C, "So are you saying that a staff from the village hall gave you the private information of another village resident?" Then C just continues to say nonsensical stuff in the lines of, No village hall staff gave me her private information, but someone from the village did go to the village hall to ask where she lived, blah blah blah, and just continues rambling all this nonsense. And after Man C's interview, Lin clarified in one of her rebuttal videos that Man C, in fact, was a related personnel at the village hall, thus the reason why he was able to know the specific location of her house. Now, I'm not sure what Lin exactly meant by the phrase related personnel of the village hall, as she did not specifically use the word staff or employee. but at least we know that throughout the interview, Man C was lying the whole time when he was acting like he was someone who had no association with the village hall, as in order for him to have the information of the exact location of Lin's house address that was registered in the village hall, he either works at the village hall himself or has a corrupt staff inside the village hall who is illegally leaking personal information of the village hall residents. She reported all of C's acts to the Hokkaido police and says that C is currently under police investigation. And due to the fact that her new house in Shiretoko was also not safe with, again, Chiri village-related people such as Man C continuing to stalk her and find out the location of her new house every time she moves, the Hokkaido police tells Rin to move to a city area. So knowing that she can no longer live on the Hokkaido island anymore, as people such as C will continue to follow her, she has now moved to the Kanto region of Japan in a house that is owned by her new agency. Now that we have heard Lin's side of the story, let us go over some of the rebuttals that were made by her perpetrators such as B, as well as some other criticisms towards Rin that has appeared in Japan online, and whether such criticisms can undermine the validity of Lin's claims. Now, B came out on an interview with Newspost 7, a Japanese online news media outlet, and told his side of the story in his attempts to refute Lin's claims. Let us go over what he said. By the way, I personally think that he went on to solidify himself and A as more of creeps from this interview, but you guys can be the judge. When asked by the interviewer of how he first met Lin, he said that he initially met Lin in order to help out with the filming part for Lin's channel when she first moved to Chiri village. He says that he was expecting to meet Lin alone, as he thought that she was running her YouTube channel by herself. But then, he says that when he went to Lin's house for the first time to film, there was another male cameraman helping her out. B says that his reaction was, "Huh? Why is there another guy here?" Then this clown of a guy, B says, literally says in the interview that he felt quote-unquote uncomfortable because there was also another male cameraman helping out during Lin's photo shoot, instead of it being some nice alone time with just B and Lin. Anyone can immediately tell from this point that this man B is some serious red flags. Like, I find it hard to put into words of how ridiculous this guy sounds throughout the whole interview. First of all, why is he uncomfortable because there was another male cameraman there? Who does he think he is? Has he not thought about how uncomfortable Lin would be to be alone in her house with the creep that was B himself? And that perhaps she had another male cameraman there for her very own safety? Why does B keep showing disappointment throughout the interview of the fact that Lin was not alone just with him during the photo shoots, but had another male cameraman helping her? Why does it have to be that it should be him and Lin, just two of them alone during the photo shoot? This becomes a theme, by the way. Throughout the interview, B constantly says that he advised Lin to drop the other cameraman in order to be truly independent and just only film with him. It seems to be the case that both B and the village power figure A really did not like the fact that Lin had another male cameraman helping her. In terms of A, as we've stated previously, he had a constant watch on when and for how long Lin's male cameraman was entering her house and when the cameraman left. Let's move on to the next question, in which the interviewer asked B, which is whether it is really true that he attempted to force Lin to date A. B answers by saying that when Lin said that she wants to move to a new house but has no money or a job, he told Lin that she should just marry A. He emphasizes that he was not serious and that he was just joking. Next question. The interviewer asks B to explain on the harassment messages in which he sent to Lin through the messenger app Line. B responded by saying that Lin's screenshot of his lewd messages were basically screenshot by Lin out of context. B says that if you actually see the conversation that was made both prior and after he said this, you can see that he's just, again, we know what he's gonna say now, joking. Next question. The interviewer asks B to clarify on why A also sent messages of harassment to Lin through Line. B responded by saying that A often goes to night establishments and interacts with female hostesses, so his sense of humor may be vulgar. But then again, B says that A was not serious and he was just joking to Lin. B says that A was not even that interested in Lin because A told him before that, to quote A, "Lin is not a good fit with me personality-wise." This was the rebuttal by B. Okay, so I have to intervene here. This rebuttal has so many red flags. First, can A.S. harass Lin because he often visits night establishments and is used to talking down on women and make vulgar jokes to them? Is Lin a hostess? And even if she was a hostess, does it mean that then people can say all kinds of harassing and humiliating things to them because they're hostesses? So this rebuttal by B is downright stupid, and once again shows the character of A. Secondly, who does A think he is? Lin clearly wants nothing to do with A. But here's A, thinking that he's the king of the village who can have any woman he wants in the village, judging this and that woman or whether they are, using his own words, a right fit for him. So there was A, judging whether Rin will be a right partner for him and saying, no, Rin does not fit well with me personality-wise. She's not my type. Talk about delusional. Let's move on to the next question. The interviewer asks B on why he told Rin that if she does not meet with A, she would not be able to survive in Chiri village. B gives a long answer for this one, so I'll quote his exact words. To quote B, "Let me explain step by step. Around October 2021, Rin asked me to introduce her to someone related to tourism. However, when it comes to introducing someone you know, you need to be very careful. So I told her that with her current YouTube channel, it might be difficult to introduce local information as local shops and such would appreciate things to be introduced in a more cheerful atmosphere. So I told her to drop her current male cameraman and become independent." End quote. Okay, so I'll briefly intervene here. The first half of this rebuttal actually makes sense. Rin's channel is a bit more on the gloomy side. She rarely smiles, and the videos themselves have a more sad tone to them. So what B said actually makes sense, in that some local food shops, for instance, would want their food to be introduced in a more cheerful atmosphere. So far, so good. But then, he suddenly says something completely random, which again shows him and A's fixation on Rin dropping her male cameraman. Like, what does Rin dropping the other cameraman have absolutely anything to do with Rin making her videos to be more smiley and cheerful? The cameraman is not dictating the tone of Rin's channel, as he is literally just there filming. It is Rin's sad facial expressions and the tone of her voice that is responsible for the mood of her channel. So we can once again see that all of this, your channel is too gloomy, so I cannot introduce you to any local shops in the village yet. But if you drop your male cameraman, I can make introductions now. It's just another lame attempt from him and A to make Rin drop her male cameraman and make sure that she is always alone by herself when she's in her house. Anyways, let's see what more B has to say. To quote B, "I found out that Rin already asked A also whether he could introduce her to someone related to tourism from Chiri village. But A declined her. So when I heard this, that is when I told Rin, if you do not get closer to A, you cannot survive in this village." End quote. So there you go. According to B, this is why he told Rin that she will not be able to survive in the village if she does not meet with A. And his rebuttal, rather than making me gain sympathy for him, made me infuriated. Rin was trying her best to make herself a part of the village community. She wanted to stop being alone and film all her content inside her house or just out in nature. She desperately wanted to meet local people and introduce local shops. But then what was A and B's response to Rin's request? Drop your male cameraman and I'll think about making introductions. So once again, there is a reason why all her YouTube content in Chiri village are of her alone. I'm sure that some local shops ran by genuinely nice people in the village wanted to invite Rin to film her videos in their shops and introduce their local items and food. But can you imagine the backlash that this local shop would receive from A once A finds out that this local shop collaborated with Rin without his permission? Thus the reason why most local establishments were most likely scared to have anything to do with Rin until they got the go sign by A, which they never did. So B ends his interview by saying that he thought he was friends with Rin and that he was just, I think you guys already know what the next upcoming word is. Yes, that he was just joking with her. He says that he was nice enough to help out Rin without any pay and that he has not done anything wrong in the slightest. He says that he now thinks that the world is a scary place because of people like Rin. His last sentence of the interview was, "I hope Rin's YouTube channel gets shut down and that she never returns to Hokkaido." And that was the end of his rebuttal interview. Man B is not afraid to show his more than questionable mindset on his Instagram page as well. In one of his Instagram posts, he repeats the shenanigans that he basically conducted in the media outlet interview. Just from the very first sentence of his Instagram post, he has the uncanny ability to make your heart boil. The first sentence of his Instagram post, where he criticizes Rin, says, "I was nice enough to help out a broke little girl who had no money, no work, no house. I was nice enough to allow her to move to our village and help her set up. But she had a damn photographer next to her." And you guys can guess what kind of stupid things he continues to say of how he and A did not like her male cameraman, and how A attempted to get Rin to drop her male cameraman, and how B defended A and also tried to get Rin to get rid of the male cameraman, etc. The people in Japan, also seeing how much red flags this villager is, bombarded his Instagram with negative comments such as "S Assault Army," You just ignore any kind of feeling that the other person may have regarding your actions. Just based on that alone, we can all agree that you are a trash human being. If a woman is living in an isolated village, such as Chiri, and have men continuously approach her in an uncomfortable way and act however they feel like, she will feel immense fear. Our conclusion of Man B and A, after considering all information, are as follows. Man B is one of those middle-aged pervs that I've seen and heard of more than plenty of times throughout my decade-plus years of living in Japan. And if there are a number of them in the most metropolitan setting of Tokyo, where law is the most well enforced in Japan, and people tend to generally be more, I do not want to use the word, but more civilized, as in better understanding the do's and do nots of the modern society compared to a villager who has lived his or her entire life in one countryside region. Imagine the kind of unhinged pervs that will exist in this isolated rural village of just a handful of people. Again, you only have to look at the village hall staff entering into Lin's house without the slightest of hesitation, or Man C proudly stalking Lin to wherever she goes in Hokkaido, without ever even having it come across his mind even once that he's committing a crime, to know that while far from the majority, there are undoubtedly a number of highly questionable figures who lives by their own laws and code in the countryside. But Man B will obviously not admit that he's a perv because he believes that he is this Ken Watanabe looking, middle-aged homme fatale whom all ladies fall for. I say this because the guy is clearly a douchebag. He wears these big shades all the time, tries so hard to look like Ken Watanabe, but unfortunately comes across as more of an obese Andrew Tate, with all his black and white photos lighting up cigars, not to mention the quintessential gloating poses of luxury brand items such as his Tom Ford sunglasses. So again, in his Delulu mind, he's the homme fatale Ken Watanabe of Chiri village. And there's a young, physically attractive girl who apparently has no money, no work, and no house, in which he repeats for the thousandth time whenever he describes Lin, so someone whom he thinks to be lower than him in every aspect of the social hierarchy, attempting to move into his very own village. Now he steps in and help her out with everything with no pay. I keep saying this because he literally makes it a mission to emphasize the fact that he helped her with no pay in every chance he gets. But such help, without being paid a single cent, is not from the kindness of his heart. As many of the Japanese commenters have commented on his Instagram page, he expects something in return. And this type of tendency is not only limited to Man B in Japan, by the way. Japan is notorious for having this you owe me psychology that is unparalleled in its degree to most other nations around the world. I can explain in depth on why this is the case, but then this video would have to be way too long. If you'd like to know the deeper historical and cultural reasoning behind as to why the you owe me culture is so extreme in Japan, please consider purchasing our book, The Secrets of the Japanese Mind. But coming back to the topic, what can a young girl who has no money, no work, and no house, as B constantly repeats when describing Lin, with the only thing that she has being her curvy figure, return for all of his kindness, in which she did not pay him a single dime for? I believe you guys already know the answer. So this Delulu man is most likely expecting some physical favors in return, but then there is one thing that is clearly blocking him and A from this potential physical action with Lin. Lin's male cameraman. Thus the reason why, whether it be the media outlet interview or his Instagram post, he just cannot control himself despite how he also probably knows just how bad this makes him look, but still can't help but go on and on and on about like a maniac of how he and A hated this male cameraman and wanted him gone. And in Japan, where hierarchy is everything, he has someone above him in the village hierarchy as well, who is man A, who is just as perverted, or possibly even more than B, based on A's predilection for visiting night establishments, and his apparent love for sending sexual messages to hostesses, as previously confessed through B's very own mouth during the interview. Thus the reason why B says all the, you have to meet with A in order to survive in this village, or marry A because you have no money and no job shenanigans towards Lin, while he continues his verbal harassment, or in his words, just jokes and sexual innuendos, meaning no harm towards Lin, regardless of how she feels, in his twisted hopes of finally getting something back in return for all his help of helping this poor little girl with no money, no job, and no house, all on no pay. Again, these are just our subjective takes, and you can very well disagree with our take on the nature of B. However, living in Japan for so many years, and hearing upon such power-playing middle-aged men with twisted interests more than often, as well as spending a year and a half doing nothing but read all kinds of literature on the Japanese psychology, and literally write a book on it, I'm confident that if B ever comes across my analysis of the situation, he'll be like, he damn near read my mind. And although I can only make such confident judgments in a Japanese context, as this is where I've lived almost all of the years of my adult life in, I'm sure that such power play with bad intentions done by older men towards younger, underprivileged women do also occur more than frequently in other nations as well. So we now know that men A, B, and C are not some fictional beings created by Rin, but are creeps existing in real life, and if the court cases come out as guilty, legitimate criminals who have done what they have done onto Rin. But then, this video will not be doing justice to the audience without mentioning some of the criticism in which Rin has received regarding her claims against the harassers in the village. So let us go over all the accusations in which Rin received from her perpetrators as well as the general Japanese public, and whether such criticisms against her are strong enough to undermine the legitimacy and truthfulness of Rin's story regarding her escape from the village. First, Rin has a record of getting her dates mixed up regarding just exactly when she ran away from Chiri village. She initially first told her fans that the month of when she escaped from the village was in November 2021. But then, on a YouTube video in which she posted on March 11th, 2022, she's still showing herself inside her house in Chiri village. Now, this itself is not the source of controversy, as after all, she could have filmed the specific footage used in the video many months ago before she evacuated from the village in November 2021. However, inside the video in which she uploaded on March 11th, 2022, she shows the electricity bill in which she received for a specific month. And if the timeline of her told escape from the village was true, then this electricity bill, in which she received while she was still living in the village, should have been a one that was billed before November 2021, right? However, on the electricity bill, it clearly shows that this bill was for the electricity in which Rin used between December 11th, 2021 to January 14th, 2022. So people began to question why she received such a large electricity bill of over 40,000 Japanese yen when this was technically a time when she was not even living in Chiri, and how she was in her Chiri village house in the first place, showing us her electricity bill for January 2022 when she should be in her new evacuation spot in Shiretoku. So some online accused her for lying about escaping from the village when she in fact was still living there. Now, although Rin did not make a formal statement regarding this accusation, which is quite rare for Rin to do as she tends to provide a formal rebuttal with evidence for every accusation she gets, we believe that there is a reason for this electricity bill controversy after looking through all the timeline and considering all information. First, YouTube is Rin's job, with her channel literally being called Rin's Countryside Life in Japanese. So our guess is that even though Rin moved to Shiretoku in late 2021, as she stated in her timeline, with Chiri village being 2.5 hours drive away from Shiretoku, she occasionally visited her Chiri village house in order to film YouTube content and most likely left on the same day. Of course, she most likely have made this visit to Chiri village with her male cameraman for her very safety. This was perfectly legal for her to do, by the way, as she said that although she evacuated to Shiretoku, she still paid the rent for her Chiri village home well until 2023, until her lease contract ended. With as to why her electricity bill came out so expensive, Rin said in her video that she thought that there was a problem with her refrigerator. So although unsure of exactly what was wrong with the fridge, we guessed that perhaps she left the door of the fridge partly open or something during the weeks when she was at her evacuation spot in Shiretoku, only for her to realize this and unplug the fridge when she eventually visited her Chiri home in a few weeks' time with her cameraman to film her YouTube content. We say this because if you actually watch the very video where she showed her electricity bills, the house is clearly not the same as before. The house looks unkept and is clearly not in a state where you can see that a person is actually living here, contributing to our assumption that her and her cameraman visited her Chiri village home in January to film YouTube content, only to find out that they have been bombarded with an insane electricity bill. But then some may ask, did Rin not say that she received an emergency phone call from her manager at her agency, that there was a report of the villagers in Chiri planning to attack her while she was at her house? So how can she possibly still return back to the village when she knows that she could be assaulted there? Was she lying or exaggerating things? There is an explanation for that as well based on the timeline of events. Rin said that although she escaped from Chiri village at the end of 2021, the exact month in which her manager at told her to not return back to Chiri village even on an occasional basis due to having heard of a plan of an attack by the villagers was in April 2022. So we believe when Rin first evacuated herself from Chiri village in late 2021, it was more in the lines of escaping herself from the pervs of the village such as men A and B and the desire to not have to deal with such annoying people in the village. But then again, shooting content in the Japanese countryside village of Chiri was her job. so she probably thought between around January to April 2022 that it was most likely okay for her to occasionally visit her Chiri village home to film YouTube content, as long as she brings along her male cameraman, and most likely left within the same day. But of course, all of her such thoughts most likely changed when Rin heard from her manager in April 2022 of the alleged plan of attack by the villagers when she was in her Chiri home, thus realizing the sheer magnitude of the danger that she may be in when she steps her foot into the village. Thus the reason why around this time frame, you no longer see any new videos from Rin in Chiri village, as she most likely stopped all her visits to Chiri altogether from mid-2022 after her manager's warning. The second and more serious criticism against Rin in his ability to potentially undermine the credibility of all her claims is the Kamui controversy. As we all know by now, on March 24th, 2023, Rin uploaded her "I will explain why I had to escape from the village" video. Then she began to receive all kinds of both support and criticism from Japanese people online. But one particular comment seems to really have gotten on Rin's nerves, which was a comment written by this commenter with the username Kamui. I'll just quote the exact words written by this commenter, Kamui. "I'm a person from the village. You keep saying villagers spread bad rumors about you, but we did not have a good impression of you all the way from the beginning. Out of the kindness of our hearts, we introduced you to a newly built house in Chiri. Then what did you say? You said, 'I want a house with a cheaper rent. Can you please never make money from Chiri village again?'" End quote. So why did Rin apparently get so upset at this particular comment? This is due to the fact that the information regarding what kind of housing she wanted was information that was only known by a handful of the staffs at the village hall. So she said that she was terrified of how even the employees from the village hall itself were getting in on the action of bullying her online. And her fear is more than justified, as after all, the people from the village hall are the people who have all sorts of personal information regarding Rin, as they have all of her resident registration documents, so it is no wonder that she's terrified of the village hall employees leaking information like this on the World Wide Web for everyone to see. So why is Rin exactly under controversy for this? As after all, it seems like she's the victim here. Well, let us get into why this is the case. Rin, being upset with the comment written by Kamui-san, screenshot the comment and uploaded it on her Instagram page. But then, some people began to notice that at the bottom of each of Rin's screenshots, there was the profile icon of Kamui-san in each of the reply to message section. How could this be possible? As Rin herself screenshot these comments, so this means that the profile icon at the bottom of the reply to message section should be the profile icon of Rin herself and not the one of Kamui. So this basically means that Rin pulled off a KD and used a fake account created by herself to write a comment in the name of Kamui, then screenshot the comment in which she wrote herself, and then started chastising this Kamui-san for leaking personal information, when in fact Kamui-san was just herself on a fake account. If this was indeed true, then this is a controversy that can really undermine all of the other claims in which Rin made about man A, B, or C, or the village in general, as it indicates a part of her faulty character, which is a willingness to lie and create false evidence in order to make her case. Now, Rin came out with a formal rebuttal with the Kamui fake account controversy, and her rebuttal is as follows. She said that there was indeed a real commenter with the username Kamui who wrote such comment on a YouTube page divulging her personal information. However, when Rin attempted to screenshot this hurtful comment by Kamui-san, the comment was somehow already deleted. However, Rin said that because the comment written by Kamui-san was not some "you suck" type of usual negative comment seen online, but something really serious, which shows that the people from the village hall could now be partaking in the movement to cyberbully her, and is beginning to reveal Rin's personal information on the World Wide Web, she said that she really wanted to bring this comment to public light to make sure that people know that such shady activities by people from the village hall was being conducted, and give the people in the village hall a warning in the lines of, if they ever do something like this again, she would not just sit back, but always take action by bringing the issue public and let everyone in Japan know about it. But then again, how can Rin bring this comment by Kamui-san to public light if this comment has already been deleted and she can no longer screenshot the comment anymore? So Rin says that at the spur of the moment, she created a sub-account and wrote out the exact same comment written by the real Kamui-san that was deleted a few seconds ago. Now, how much of this is her telling the truth, we cannot say for sure. I mean, her argument in and of itself is not unbelievable. She really had no reason to go out of her way to create something completely fictional in order to make the people from the village hall look worse than they already do now. Because there are already so much information out there with physical evidence that clearly tells you that some people who work in the Chiri village hall are either under the heavy influence of the power figure A, or are just not right in the head in terms of understanding what is legal and illegal. Rin already had the literal CCTV evidence of 2 men from the village hall break into her house illegally without a police warrant or anything with a master key. And we have an audio evidence of the village hall staff blatantly lying in a salty voice, or when asked by Rin's new manager of why the people from the village hall broke into her house without ever even attempting to call her first. The staff responded in an irritated fashion of how it is because they did not have her phone number.
電話番号などはご存知でないっていうことですかね。
When there are clear text message evidences of Rin sending her email address and her phone number to that exact village hall staff who was on the phone call. And again, even if they did have Rin's phone number, this does not justify them heading to Rin's house to investigate, and when she did not answer the door, just break into her house. Who do they think they are talking about investigating? Are they the police? And even the police cannot once again break into someone's house with a master key without having a police warrant. We already know that man C, the proud stalker who always finds out where Rin lives and follows her to wherever she goes in the island of Hokkaido, had a Freudian slip during his interview and say with his own mouth that he was able to find out where Rin lived in Chiri village through someone from the village hall.
釣村役場の人から、聞いてますって言っちゃってもいいのかな、違うかな、聞いてるんですけど。
So knowing just how sly some of the people in the village hall are, it would not be surprising to think that someone from the village hall with the YouTube username of Kamui could have indeed wrote that original comment bad-mouthing Rin. Then when some of Rin's fans began criticizing the real Kamui who wrote the comment, realized that he or she has effed up and just went on to hastily delete the comment. However, Rin still did not do the right thing by creating a sub-account and faking another person. If she explained everything to her fans in an honest fashion and just said plainly of how there was a very bad comment seemingly written by someone from the village hall but then somehow got deleted, etc., most people would have more than well understood what she was trying to say. So through the Kamui controversy, I believe her level of credibility did receive a degree of negative impact. But at the same time, throughout our extensive research of Rin and the case of her escape from the Japanese countryside, this is what we personally observed. Although Rin is not a perfect human being by any means, and thus do seem to have a tendency to sometimes exaggerate her claims, at the end of the day, she does not seem to be the person who plain and simple makes something up out of thin air or create false evidences. All of her screenshot evidences of the text messages from man A, B, and C turned out to be true and are not Photoshop text messages or anything of that nature. When she talked about village level Murahachibu, her claims of villagers dumping snow in front of her house turned out to be true with CCTV footage backing it up. Man from village hall breaking into her house turned out to be true with, again, literal CCTV footage. Man C stalking her and following her even to her new evacuation spot in Shiretoko turned out to be true. You guys get the idea. So for people who are determined to bring Rin down, as in the case of some people online in Japan, they can indeed just go on and on and on about the Kamui controversy or the dates in her timeline not aligning by a few days, etc. But at the same time, you do not have to be a supporter of Rin to also admit that Rin is overall just much more believable with the way she brings much more physical evidence to corroborate her claims, and also make sure to refute false claims made by man B, man C, or the village hall with evidence, while the only apparent rebuttal that her perpetrators can make towards Rin are just laughable at best, such as man B with his perennial repetition of, "I was just joking, Rin cannot take jokes." Or man C with his, "I know where exactly Rin lives in Chiri village, and she lives so close to the police station, so she has no worries and is lying." Or the village hall staff with either their lies or their no comment attitude for their acts due to their inability to deny what they have done. So now that we're finally aware of what has happened and have heard all sides of the story, what can we then take away from Rin's escape from the Japanese countryside? First, it shows us a glimpse of the dark side of the life in the Japanese countryside. When I see videos on YouTube where creators cover some of the negative social issues existing in Japan, I often see comments in the lines of, "This only happens in the cities such as Tokyo. Go to the countryside and things are much better." And such a mindset is partly true. Let's not get that wrong. Some problems regarding Japan do often strictly appear only within the city settings. However, to also claim that the countryside regions of Japan is this utopian place where all is right is also far from being true. There is a reason why, especially for many young women in Japan who were born and raised in the countryside, they make it their life's mission to get out of the countryside as soon as they reach the age of adulthood. And it's not just for jobs. From the real-life story of Rin, we can observe quite a few things. First, village-level bullying and ostracism, or Murahachibu in Japanese, is still unfortunately, at least to some degree, a thing in Japan. Now, I still have my doubts and reservations of whether what Rin suffered in Chiri village can be described as a full-out Murahachibu. Although Rin directly used the word Murahachibu in many of her explanations, I believe this could have been done better on her part, as her usage of the word Murahachibu, literally meaning village-level bullying and ostracism in Japan, led to the impression that everyone in Chiri village was in on making her life a living misery. However, I personally believe that rather than considering what has happened to her as a village-level Murahachibu, we should think that it was a handful of malicious villagers, especially ones who unfortunately yield a lot of influence in the village, such as A and his underlings, such as B and C, that are largely responsible for what has happened to Rin, and that the blame should not be directed to the entirety of the Chiri village itself. But then, I also partly understand why Rin continues to describe what has happened to her in the countryside as Murahachibu, as honestly speaking, there were just too many people involved. A villager whom she never even met, dumping snow right in front of her house, and when she politely requests them to stop, rudely making up nonsensical excuses, such as, "I'm putting snow at the borderline. What is a problem?" When you can clearly see that they're not putting snow on the borderline, but way beyond the borderline, and right in front of Lin's house. Tourist guys of the village, whom Lin never met, spreading negative rumors about her. Man C, most likely an underling of Man A, working at the village hall, or at least know a lot of people from the village hall, making sure that Lin stays scared and miserable even after she evacuated herself from Chiri by illegally finding out the new house that she moved to in Shiretoko, driving all the way up there, take photos of the house that she was hiding in, and upload it on SNS. Number of men working in the village hall, whom Lin said that she initially trusted and thought were good people, not having the slightest of hesitation to do something completely illegal, which is to use a master key and break into her home. Constantly being rejected by the village hall when she requested if she could introduce some of the village shops or restaurants, thus the reason why all her YouTube content is her doing things alone, because she literally was not allowed to create content starring other villagers or local establishments. So all this trauma of being shunned, and more than often her legal rights being blatantly violated, could have led her to have the mindset that what has happened to her was indeed a case of Murahachibu, and thus the reason why she uses the word in order to describe her case. The second takeaway point is somewhat more controversial, but after thought, I nonetheless have to make this point, as a little caution to avoid even a 1% chance of the pain-inducing tragedy is still far better than being completely naive and innocent, and be that 1 in 100 victim of an unspeakable crime that would haunt and traumatize the victim for their entire life. If you're a young single female, then Lin's life story tells you that you should be careful when thinking of leaving the city life, get a house in a small and isolated countryside region with a tiny population, and decide to live alone. I believe, while our lens is currently on Japan right now, such concerns are not only limited to Japan, but many other nations around the world in general. Because while I do not know much about the situation in Europe or in the States, but at least in other East Asian nations, such as South Korea and China, similar stories, as in the likes of Lin, also do occur in these East Asian countries as well, to young women residing in the countryside, which means that this is not just an isolated endemic only limited to Japan. But one of the reasons why making this point is still somewhat controversial is because many in Japan question whether the planned group attack by the village men while she was alone in her house, as confessed by Lin, actually happened or not, and whether or not Lin is really telling the truth. And I understand why such a question may arise because, let's be honest, many do find it hard to believe that such a planned assault by a group of men in the village could really be happening in 21st century Japan. Japanese customs, such as yobai. I detest the usage of the word custom because this is one of those things where people back in the days blatantly justified and normalized as assault in the name of tradition. But anyhow, Japan did have a custom back in the days, especially in the countryside, where, to quote the words of the Japanese Wikipedia and their definition of yobai, the act of visiting another village's place where she sleeps in the middle of the night for the purpose of similar to assault. But then again, such practices in Japan is said to have largely been eradicated from beginning of the Meiji era in the late 19th century, and is said to have been completely eradicated by the 20th century. So many in Japan criticize Lin for creating a fictional story over one that would only happen in the old days in the Japanese countryside, in order to ignite the imagination of her largely male audience and attract more views. And again, I understand why such a criticism may arise. So let us look into the facts. When Lin said that she has heard that a group of men from the village were planning to attack her house, she stated clearly of where she heard this from, which was from her manager at her talent agency, Now, if she said something in the lines of, "I heard from someone that I know in the village that some villagers were going to attack my house," or I heard from some source that some villagers were going to attack my house, as in not clarifying the exact source of where she has heard this from. This exponentially increases the possibility that Rin is indeed making things up for the attention. However, Rin clearly indicates where she has heard this news of the villagers' line of attack from, which is again her very manager at And is not some run-of-the-mill 2 or 3 employees having company. It is a Tokyo Stock Exchange enlisted, one of the biggest and most reputable MCM agencies in Japan. So if Rin lied about what her manager has told her, there are a couple of reasons why I believe there's no way that would have still not corrected her claims by now. First, is no longer invested in Rin. Rin dropped as her agency during this ordeal, meaning that no longer has any responsibility to defend Rin or has any financial advantage that they can gain from Rin. In fact, I believe is most likely not thinking fondly of Rin at the moment, of how she has constantly criticized the agency for not taking proper action against the harassers in the village while they were still her agent, and how refrained her from talking to her subscribers. And Rin's public criticism of did put the agency in a bad light from a reputation perspective in Japan. So with Rin no longer being their contracted YouTuber and her continuing to criticize the agency, if it was indeed the case that Rin was making things up and was lying by saying that her manager at has told her that she was planned to be attacked by the villagers while she was in her house, when her manager in fact has never made such a statement, then I really do believe that would have came out by now when Rin dropped them as her agency and just said, "No, we did not tell Rin of such things, such as a planned attack by the villagers at our house." But then, such rebuttal by never happened, which can indicate that Rin's manager has indeed said what she said about the villagers' attack, and cannot refute this, as Rin most likely has screenshot or recorded the phone call with her manager, as Rin usually does with the evidences regarding her case. And has been very fast to correct Rin publicly whenever she did something in which the agency did not like. For instance, Rin previously criticized for lying to her and not paying her properly. When Rin conducted volunteer work with the Hokkaido police, told her that Rin will not be paid for the work, as the Hokkaido police did not offer any financial compensation. But then, when Rin found out that was secretly asking for compensation behind her back without letting her know, Rin publicly criticized the agency. Then was very fast to respond to Rin's accusations, saying that Rin should take back what she has said about the agency. So with all of this considered, there is really no way that if Rin was making things up about the villagers planning to attack her and directly crediting her manager at as her source of this information, would not respond back to this if she was lying and using the name in her lies. So then if Rin did not lie, then did Rin's manager from lie about this supposed planned attack by the male villagers? Perhaps. But then, why would ever risk this? They are not some random, small-sized agency. They are literally the biggest MCN in Japan and are enlisted on the Tokyo Stock Exchange, for crying out loud. They just have way too much to lose by creating a false accusation, not just any accusation, like stealing a pencil or something, but a serious accusation of group assault by a number of men from a specific village. So yeah, really do not have much to gain by lying and making up such a serious false accusation either, as again, they have so much to lose if they were indeed committing such an act. Because if they were lying, then a powerful figure with a national politician behind him, such as Man A from Chiri Village, would not just sit there and do nothing. He would sue for defamation and win, because if did not have any evidence of this planned attack by the villagers, there's no way that A would not win from a defamation case. So if you do not just sit here and shout, Rin is lying, like most of our haters in Japan, but actually consider all information, it really makes no sense for Rin to lie and make up such a bold of a claim, as in the case of a plan of a group assault, because if she was making all of this up, then she must have the biggest audacity, as there are so many angles in which her lie can be revealed and just destroy her entire case, as well as her entire YouTube career. As in, her old agency, which did not end things on a good note with Rin, are quick to correct her when she does something that they don't like, would again have just came out with a statement such as, "Our manager from did not inform Rin of such a planned attack by the villagers. She has to stop creating lies and use the employees in her false stories and defame the company." And that would be the end of it. But no, this did not happen. So while we cannot say for 100% sure that the villagers were indeed planning to conduct such an attack on Rin while she was alone in her house, We cannot just cover our eyes and say with 100% certainty that she's lying and making this up either, because of how she transparently clarified the source of where she has heard this plan of attack from, and how her source is the biggest MCN of Japan that could easily refute her claims if she was indeed lying with one simple Twitter announcement, and easily ruin her entire case, her entire YouTube career, and just everything that she has built. And most of all, we literally see with our two eyes of how the men from the village hall have absolutely no hesitation in getting a master key and breaking into her house. Are they the police? And even if they are the police, they still can't just get in. They need a legal warrant from the judge in order to do so. But modern 21st century laws regarding police warrants? Who cares? They have the law of the village. And the law of the village says that they can just get a master key and enter into a house of where a woman lives by herself. And I think that the people in Japan really do not put enough emphasis on this illegal break-in. And conveniently enough, her haters in Japan just skip and act like they don't see this illegal house break-in part altogether and never mention it, which must be extremely frustrating for Rin. I really don't get it either, to be honest. This is such a blatant violation of the law, and people in other countries would absolutely be furious at this. But not sure whether it is because Japan has the history of one villager entering into the house of another villager, such as yobai or whatnot. But nobody in Japan really talk about this illegal break-in, no matter how much Rin says that she was scared for her safety, emphasizes that this is strictly illegal, and pleads her case. So yeah, I'm sure that if this video gets over 100,000 or even 1 million plus views, as some of our past videos have, there will still be that one guy who write a comment in the lines of, "Man, you paranoid. Countryside in Japan is more than safe for young women to live alone. Stop exaggerating." And we've already seen how the Japanese comment section is like whenever there's an article regarding Rin's story. Rin literally shows them a CCTV footage of two men breaking in and entering into her house with a master key. And some people still write, she's exaggerating things to get views and make village people look bad. Sodaro. These people will not stop until a victim gets assaulted, and even then, they'll still blame the victim. So we know that there's no talking sense into these people with such a logic. So when someone does say, "Man, you paranoid," I'll just say, yeah, you're right, as attempting to talk sense into them is one of the biggest time-wasting acts that you can conduct. But then to everyone else, you know what I mean. By all means, 99% of cases, you'll most likely be completely fine, even if you are a young woman living alone after purchasing a house located in an isolated region in the Japanese countryside. But then a little caution will still go a long way. Check, and I mean thoroughly checking the reputation of the village before moving in will be a good idea. And preferably, you should not think of moving into a village that is too small in size as done by Rin, because as we've all seen, an extremely small village could have the chance of having a Delulu power play guy, such as Man A, thinking that he's this little Kim Jong-un of the village, not to mention his loyal underlings, such as Man B and Man C, as well as most likely the men from the village hall who got a master key and broke into Rin's house. Make sure that the house has tight security and multiple CCTVs installed. For crying out loud, perhaps raise a Rottweiler. Always better safe than sorry. And make sure that you invite friends or people you know frequently, as done by Rin with her male photographer, so that the villagers know that you're not alone all the time, and do have people who can come by quick if you are to need help. As Shoran said, memories of pain are usually stronger and longer lasting than memories of pleasure. So take your steps of caution if you ever decide to buy a house, and think of even living in rural Japan after watching one of the many YouTube videos recently emerging on the English-speaking side of YouTube regarding the cheap, beautiful houses that are being given away in the rural regions of Japan, which many abroad find it to be extremely fascinating. As after all, while the nature and the beautiful landscape in the Japanese countryside may be everything that you've asked for, the type of interaction that you might inevitably have to make with certain groups of villagers may not be. And last but not least, our final message ends with a point regarding Rin herself. As you may have already guessed by now, the victim-blaming culture online in Japan is absolutely brutal. It is so brutal to the point that if you're just an outsider who do not invest hours and hours, such as how I have, in gathering all the facts regarding the case, but just quickly read an article about her and skim through the comment section of the article, you'll quite literally be like, oh, she must have done something really bad. She's the one to blame. And just move on with your day with that conclusion. When Rin uploaded her first explanation video on March 24th, 2023, she created the video in more of a storytelling mode where she just informed her subscribers of what happened.
村の男性から2人で会いたいと言われて 誘いを断れば断るほど私の悪い噂が増えていきました。
Then after this video, she received so much criticism across Japan online in the lines of, "Where are the evidence? Are you just making all of this up for the views?" Then she uploads a new video on April 21st to explain on the lies that Man B conducted during his media outlet Rebuttal interview. This time, she had the physical evidence of his lie, which was a text message previously received by Man B, which clearly shows that he lied in the interview. So now that she brought evidence, all the "where is the evidence" victim blamers changed the rhetoric of criticism from "where is the evidence" to "why not just go to the police?" So on August 25th, 2023, Rin now uploads her most comprehensive video as of yet, clarifying to people that yes, she has brought the matter to the Japanese police, and that she had filed a lawsuit against Man A for harassment, and to his underling, Man C, for harassing and stalking. And to add to that, she brought even more evidence than before on this August 25th video as well. So now, she brought the evidence and brought the matters to the police. Surely the criticism and victim blaming now has to stop. But no. One of the very top comments of her August 25th video with most likes is a comment criticizing her for something that is completely irrelevant to the case itself, which is a comment saying, "You have such good camera equipment and staff to take pictures, and you have many subscribers and advertise on YouTube. So why do you keep saying that you have no money to rent a new house? Lol." Indeed being short of things to blame and bully her on, now that she has brought the evidence and brought the matters to the police, as the haters demanded, you can see now that the type of criticism has become more creative, trying to find whatever they possibly can in order to put her in a more negative light. People criticize her for the type of content in which she makes, in the lines of how she is always acting poor and appealing to poverty when she is in fact not poor, or of how she sometimes shows skin in order to attract male fans, so deserves what has happened to her because of the type of content that she makes in the first place. And needless to mention the prototypical comments which effectively depicts Japan's prominent community over the individual, or the "do not cause meiwaku to others by making such dirty matters surface" mindset, which are the many comments in the lines of how she is a bad person for bringing this issue to public light, and how she is destroying the reputation of Chiri village. But on the brighter side, we are glad to see that most of the Japanese comments, at least on her YouTube channel right now, are mostly positive, although it seems that she does control her comment section to some extent, as she showed a screenshot in one of her videos of how she first holds the comments on her YouTube channel for her review before they go public. And the comment section of the online articles regarding her, where she has no control over, I don't think I have to elaborate on how bad they are. So what she needs now is positivity and support. If a person does not like how she often appeals to poverty, then they should just not watch her videos. If a person does not like how she sometimes shows skin and appeals to her figure, then they should just not watch her videos. If a person does not like how she has a gloomy and sad facial expression most of the time in her videos, then they should just not watch her videos. At the end of the day, all YouTubers cannot be all laughters and smiles. Same with the very style of her videos. I believe that Rin has her own distinct philosophy and her own sense of aesthetics in which she thinks that she has to adhere by in all of her videos. Thus the reason why even the videos where she explains serious issues such as how and why she had to escape from the Japanese countryside still nonetheless maintain the video aesthetics that are uniquely there in all of the other Rin's videos as well, in which people seem to either love or hate. The point that I'm making here is that just because her type of YouTube content may not suit the taste of many, it does not mean that she deserves all the victim blaming that she currently does, as in how she deserved all of this, how this is all her own doing, or how she is making so much of a big fuss for views and marketing when it is really not that big of a deal. Yeah, when she was ostracized and harassed, when men break into her house with a master key, when a stranger goes on to find out the location of her village home, then when she runs away from the village, follows her to her new home where she ran away to, take photos of her new place, and upload it on social media, she is still making too much of a big deal and is causing a scene. So we at least want the comment section of this video to be full of comments in support of her, wishing her the best wherever she decides to move to next, as she obviously cannot go back to Hokkaido for her very safety. It is quite sad to see what has happened to her YouTube channel, to be honest. She was gaining hundreds of thousands of subscribers by the year, go on to sign herself with the biggest MCN agency in Japan, getting a guaranteed 6 to 7 digit range views in each of her videos, and even be invited as a guest in one of the most popular TV shows on Japanese television. So if she just continued her YouTube career in Chiri Village as usual, I believe she could have had up to or more than 1 million subscribers by now. However, perhaps it was the trauma from the people from Chiri Village, such as Man C, following her even to her new home in Shiretoko, and thus absolutely does not want to be revealed of where she lives anymore. But after moving from Shiretoko to her new home in the Kanto region, after being warned by the Hokkaido police to move, she rarely films herself in the new Kanto region or in the surrounding area anymore. This means that she now makes most of her videos with recycled film footage in which her and her photographer took back from Chiri Village or in Shiretoko prior to her escaping from Hokkaido. But YouTube being the competitive place that it is, her constantly recycling old footage back from Hokkaido, where she no longer lives in for her new videos, seems to be having a negative impact on her channel, as none of her recent videos, unlike literally all her old videos made prior to the village escape, ever receives a view count higher than 100,000. So we'll put the link of our YouTube channel in the description for this video as well, so if you sympathize with her situation, please give her some support over there as well if you can, and wish her the best. So with that said guys, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Asian Analysis. If you have enjoyed today's video and want us to continue to introduce and analyze original stories from East Asia, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. With that said everyone, have a good one, and we'll see you on the next episode of Asian Analysis.